What's up, dude?
Hey, what's going on?
How are you?
I'm good. How about yourself?
Hanging in there. I'm in the basement. Like there's like an offshoot room where I keep all my crap. Like it's buried in the bottom of the house. It's kind of where I am. I got my son homeschooling on his computer, my computer in there, and I'm in here, and my youngest son's sleeping, and it's a weird, what a weird existence right now. It's so
It is.
weird.
It's so. My kids are supposed to be on spring break right now, so I don't get the privilege of putting them on schoolwork right now.
Oh.
So
Well, I'll
hopefully
tell you
they're not
what.
too crazy.
Take it in because it's. We'll get to golf here in a second, but this homeschooling thing is.
It's brutal.
It's bananas. It is bananas. So, all right. Well, welcome to the show. I'm gonna hit record. So, okay, buddy.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about Diamana and Mitsubishi and everything else. So, do me a favor for everybody. I know who you are. I've talked to you plenty of times, but just for the people that don't know, who are you? What's your responsibilities? Like, who is Avery Reed?
Well, that's a long story, but the long and short of it, right now I'm actually the tour manager for Mitsubishi Aldila Golf. So, been working with them. This is my 7th year out on tour.
Okay.
And headed up the fitting facility at TPC Sawgrass for almost 5 years.
Okay.
And then worked for TaylorMade. Nice hat.
I see it. Thank you.
I worked for TaylorMade previous to that, working out on tour and working at the Kingdom.
Okay, so you're pretty well versed, So when you got out there, you weren't like lone soldier. You kind of knew a bunch of people already, and it wasn't like
Correct.
super bizarre for you when you got up there.
No.
So do me a favor, like just kind of paint me through what it's like for a shaft rep out on tour, because you're on a truck, but you're not really on a truck. Like you're sort of a weird middle
Correct.
guy. So
Yeah.
explain to me how that works for you guys.
Yeah, being on both sides, it's interesting. The shaft world's a little bit different just because we don't sponsor any of the players. Which actually speaks volumes. If you do start getting a lot of stuff in play, it speaks more to the product and less to a contract. It makes it difficult in the fact that, we can't always advertise players or talk about players that are playing our product.
Sure.
And you walk a fine line out there because there are contracted players. So, we work closely with all the OEMs. We have great partnerships with all the OEMs, and the last thing I want to do is go step on their toes trying to get involved in a player. So it's kind of walking that fine line with getting stuff in play, but not upsetting the other guys. So
walk me through like a I don't know how much you want to name names, but obviously the most famous person on the planet plays a lot of your stuff, and
yeah,
and
a lot of them do.
Right. So that's got to get complicated because, especially over the last, we'll call it 4 or 5 years, you guys have been, in win counts, for example. I don't know about shaft counts. I don't have the exact numbers on that, but like for win counts, you guys are up there, especially in the majors. I mean, with Koepka and T-Dub and
without a doubt.
else. Like it's been nuts, but it is kind of hard. You guys can't really talk about it all that much. You kind of have to just be like, right. Yeah, that's our stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy when you look at some of the stats you're bringing up. Like, I mean, worldwide right now on all the tours, since we've been in business, Mitsubishi has 457 wins. So, I mean, that's a big number. And we do. Right now, as of the players since the break, we've got 19 guys in the top 50 playing driver shaft, and you add Aldila onto that, and I mean, it's pretty dominant.
What do you... Really quick, sorry to interrupt you, but like when it comes to a shaft company, what are your priorities as far as like marketing is concerned? Is it the drivers or is it just overall shafts like in play?
Our main focus on tour, which we're actually starting to transition. I can talk about that a little later with MMT, but our main focus is the wood shafts. Okay. So it's working with those guys and getting something that's visible in play. And it's going to be in play on TV quite a bit, meaning, you need to have the top guys that are there every week trying to play your stuff. So in a situation where, because I've been out there plenty of times, there's 2 different delivery systems for a player to get a shaft, like a Diamana, for example. They can either go to the tour trucks and get them, or they can go to you. Yeah.
Why would somebody, like, we'll use, let me think of it, we'll call him Morikawa. For example, right? He plays Tensei White.
Mm-hmm.
So he wants to he's looking for new shafts. He wants to get back in some sort of a Mitsubishi shaft.
Yeah.
Does he go to Adrian and Trotty and those boys to get what he needs, or does he go to Avery to get what he needs, or is it everybody involved?
It's everybody. It's a full circle. Like I said, it's all about relationships. So, I have great relationships with players out there, and players have great relationships with OEM reps. So when that all gets initiated, they're usually going to go to who they feel comfortable with. Okay. And then from that point, I'm the knowledgeable guy on the shaft side. And obviously, like you take the TaylorMade guys, they all know their product inside and out. So it's kind of a combination of what they want to do with the head and then how I feel the shaft is going to best perform.
So in a situation like that, like with Colin, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
So in a situation like that with a player like Colin Morikawa, do you interact with him at all, or is it you to the tour truck guys and them to their player, or how does that, like, how much do you get into that conversation with that particular player? I mean, are you and Colin in like a bubble talking too?
It depends. Like I said, sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Okay.
A lot of the time it comes down to contracts, and so players are very protected.
Sure.
So I might get a phone call or, hey, we're working out on the driving range. Will you come out here and please put in, we need some advice on where to go from here. So my advice is always asked. It's just a question of how, the other problem is that out there it's a feeding fest too. So, one thing you want to avoid is when a guy's testing, you don't want 30 guys standing around him. They really, a lot of the guys don't mind, but a lot of the guys, they want to stay private. So the least amount of people there, the better. The better, yeah. I mean, because
I always figured the guys that were on the club head side and then transitioned into the shafting, like if you want to take Akrashan or Lego or somebody that's worked with players on clubs that transition into the component part of it, I got to believe that that's a lot easier because you already have a relationship with them in that way. I guess your ability to get into that conversation is way easier than if you were just, Bob Jones from like,
Right.
Okay.
But and that being said too, a lot of it comes down to the product as well. And
sure.
We take pride in the fact that our product's always consistent and it's going to do what we say it's going to do, and the players know that, the OEMs know that. So a lot of the times it comes down to what the player's comfortable with, and if the rep knows that it's going to work, he's not afraid to test it as well.
Okay, we're going to get into shafts in a second. I have one more question. I wrote an article about a month ago now about all the equipment shakeups that happened, right? Rosie was testing stuff, and PXG had some stuff going on, and I kind of made the comment of like, when a player signs a club contract, it's certain percentage of the actual clubs and certain percentage of the personnel, the people that are going to be handing them the clubs. Yes. Right? Like the personal relationships come into play, and what I've noticed a lot of, and I've heard a lot, and you may be able to confirm this or not, but like when it comes to shafts, like if we're going to use the Big Cat, for example, he's been in your stuff for 16 years, right? Yeah. At least one for like the last 16 years. So obviously there's other great shaft companies out there, but to me that is a personal relationship, him with the shaft and him with the company. Like he just trusts that he doesn't want to go out and test the waters anywhere else because at least he knows that that's like a fixed point of reference. It won't change. It works. And
he has in the past, but he always comes back right away. And I think that's, like I said, it just goes down to the fact of, it's proven, it's always consistent, and that's key for those guys. If they get something and it's not consistent or it's not doing what it's supposed to do, right, the odds of them testing that again are going to be very slim.
Okay, so let's get into the product here
Sure.
That's the whole point. So we're going to use a player. We'll use an interesting case study right now, which would be, I can say it, but you can't, but Brooks Koepka, right? Former number one, has made some adjustments, went from D+ to Tensei White AV in his driver. We'll just deal with the drivers for now. Okay. Tell me the difference, because you guys just came out with a new D+. Tell me the difference between those two, because I get that question all the time. So what's the difference between D+ and Tensei AV?
Well, the D+ is going to be just a little bit lower torque value. Okay. The biggest difference for us, really, when you look at all of our lines, we try to keep things very simple for both the player, the rep, and for OEMs. So across the board, we keep everything. Everybody knows our red, white, and blue. You know, white's going to be the low launching, low spin. Blue's mid launch, mid spin. Or red is our high launch, high spin. And you'll see that across whether it's Diamana or you'll see that in the Tensei line as well. You know, obviously Tensei orange is a different animal, and we gave it a completely different color. But as far as the D+, the Diamana stuff is, generally speaking, it's going to be a little bit lower in torque. But the big difference between all of our lines is that, and we pride ourselves in it, is we have the ability to do breakthrough materials because of the company that we work for. So the biggest difference is going to be material difference. So in the AV line, for example, you know, in the CK we had the carbon Kevlar, and now we've transferred into the aluminum vapor, which you can tell that's the difference in the paint. So we have the AV raw, which is that silver finish towards the butt section of the handle or towards the grip. And it's going to be a little bit tighter material, a little bit stronger. And we have boron in the tip section. And if you take D+, for example, we used a new material, pitch fiber in the handle of the butt section of that one. Very tight material, 90-ton material. And so that's where we first started. You'll see that now in the new Diamana line with DF, BF, all of that. But that's kind of where it originated from. So biggest difference between the two, I would say that a little bit tighter torque, a little bit tighter altogether in the Diamana line over the Tensei line.
So I guess in layman's terms, that would be one is a little bit more stable and one has the opportunity for a little bit more play. I guess
a little bit more feel.
When I mean play, also I mean the opportunity for a rocket ball. Because the reason I say it is when I talk to a lot of these guys, I'll ask them about their setup or whatever, and they'll point to a backup driver. They're like, okay, that shaft combination with that head has a rocket ball in it. It's not as straight, it's not as this, but every once in a while, if I catch it right, it'll go 15 yards further than the rest of them. But then they'll point to their gamer and be like, that one just goes a number. Like, that just goes, there's no rocket ball in it, there's no dud in it. It's like, I hit it out of the middle and it just goes where it's supposed to go. And I've noticed, and for me, that conversation always centered around torque. It's always like, one is a slingshot and one's a hammer. So it just depends on whether I want to shoot somebody or hit them over the head. And I was like, okay, that's an interesting way to kind of put it.
It's very true. You know, I mean, we find the lower the torque, you know, the stiffer it's going to feel. You know, and if you took an extremely stiff profile shaft and you completely lower the torque on it, that's where you start to get that boardy feeling. So if you take, for example, like you brought it up the other day when we were talking, but the Kuro Kage that you still see out there on tour. You know, one of the things that we did was it just had a little bit higher torque to it. And it created a little bit more feel for the guys, and it obviously went over very, very well. And you'll see that too now in the rip line for Aldila, the new rip that's been launched on tour.
Which I have. I mean, I'm sitting next to my stuff right here. Like, I can show people the example, like if they want to look at it. But like, this is an interesting shaft. This is an Aldila shaft. I'll try to hold it up here. But that is the 130 Rogue 60 test, which is a low launch, lower spin profile, but it's also counterbalance, correct?
It's counterbalance, and actually we designed it to be a little bit higher launch, higher launch, higher spin. And it's kind of been an oddball on tour. Sometimes when you do all the testing, when it's written down on paper, it doesn't always match what we see out in the field, and that's been a fun one, actually. We've really enjoyed working with that, and it's fit a lot of different players that we didn't expect it to.
Yeah, I've had, it's been an interesting journey with that shaft, because when Zane, built it for me, it was interesting because he had to add an extra weight to like an M5 head. So like my M5 head has 3 weights in it to make it spec out, which I was like, what the hell is going on here?
Extremely high balance point.
Yeah, I do want to talk a little bit about Kuro Kage because it's like a cult classic on tour.
Correct.
So is D+, actually. It's oddly enough. But what is it about? You sort of touched on it just a second ago, but what is it about that shaft that it's not so much that people switch into it, it's people refuse to switch out of it?
Out of it.
Yeah. Why is that?
Number one, if you look at the guys that are playing it, they've had a tremendous amount of success in the past playing it. And we've seen certain players go back to it, and it almost turns into one of those, it's like, it's comfortable. They're comfortable with it. They know what it's going to do. It's going to perform well. You know, it took off on tour. When was that? Probably 4 years ago, maybe. But I would say now you see a lot of stuff coming out, but the guys, all of a sudden they see it and it brings back a lot of good memories, you know, and it still performs. It's no different. So they're still putting it in play.
Well, it's also a shaft to me that seems to match up well with each head as it comes out. It's one of those shafts where like there's very few components or club heads that can make, you know, its shitty counterpart good. Like, for example, like if I was going to take G400 was such a stable head, it could make a really crappy shaft playable, right?
Right. Yeah.
Kuro Kage to me is like, and oddly enough, this is not a Fujikura ad, but like Fujikura also the same thing. Like they've had shafts that, like Ventus Black to me is a good shaft that can make a shitty head good. And you guys have numerous shafts that are like that. Tensei White is a shaft that's like that.
Correct.
XTS, Kuro Kage is like that. And I think a lot of it has to do with, just because I've tried them all, a lot of it's just how they swing it too is they're ridiculously stable. Like,
yes.
They're just ridiculously stable. And to me, that's always been like the Mitsubishi trademark is the stability. Like you guys have always made a shaft that doesn't play around too much.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just consistent.
Yeah, it was, and that Kuro Kage one was interesting. It was actually a prototype that we originally started, and I think at least everybody on here has seen, you know, it originally had those 3 stamps that said XTS on it.
Right.
And all that meant was an extra stiff tip section. We made it extremely stable through the tip section, and then we added torque to it. And so that's when that whole thing took off, and that would be, so anybody out there now can see Kuro Kage XT was the same exact shaft. But to get it out to market, we couldn't do the 3 letters, we could only do the 2.
Because I think that's the one I have right now is it says XT70 or something like that. Yeah,
that's it.
Okay. So is there any plans to, at any point, to beef that shaft up? Like, what can you do to that specific shaft to make it, you know, the newer version or the sexier version of the XT or the XTS?
Yeah. So the other side of my job, other than being out on tour, which I love, is the fun part is developing this stuff. So we've got some new ideas and we're working on some stuff, and I'm not sure, you know, when it'll actually filter out or make it to tour, but we're definitely in the process of revisiting Kuro Kage. We're not going to let that brand die.
Okay. I'm going to actually get to some of these questions. There are a lot of good questions.
Sure.
So Matris 1 asks, what's the closest current shaft to the Kali?
The Kylie. Actually, to be honest, the new BF is very, very close. I would say that it was built off of a very similar profile. The material in it's going to give it a very similar feel.
Gotcha. Okay. Matthew Asim, God, these names are crazy. Difference between D Plus and new D Limited.
So, actually, that's pretty simple. There is no difference.
Okay.
What it was when the Plus stuff was a U.S. market. We only sold it in the U.S. Obviously, over the past few years, we've had a ton of success with it, with a lot of big names. So Japan has now made it a global product. And what we did is we changed the cosmetic a little bit. We added in some different weights and some different flexes that we didn't have in the past for that product. And now they're selling it global.
Okay. So we got another one here. I want to talk about MMT quite a bit here. We're going to get to the iron shafts and stuff like that in a second. Marty Savage, who's a builder out of TXG, him and I did something kind of interesting. And I had a Tensei White 80TX that was, you know, built to 5 wood specs or whatever, and we wanted to make it into a 7 wood or whatever, right? And he cuts, you know, half an inch or 3/4 of an inch off the butt end of the shaft. And oddly enough, that shaft, because you would think if you cut it that short, which is a pretty stout shaft, you would think that it would get really, really stiff. But oddly enough, that shaft actually got way easier to swing when it was shorter. And I've always wanted to ask you, like, how does that happen? Is it because he cut it out of the butt, or is it because he cut it out of, like, how does that work?
Well, obviously, cutting it from the butt section is going to do less impact to the shaft than cutting it from the tip section. So, if he would have cut it from the tip section, it probably would have been extremely stiff. And I don't know what he cut from the butt or from the tip section to begin with. But cutting it from the handle, yeah, I mean, it's going to make it shorter, so you'll have more control over it. It makes perfect sense. I mean, it's the same shaft. When we use an 80-gram shaft, it's all cutting it. I mean, whether it's going in a 3-wood or a 5-wood, it's generally length, and then tipping is based off of what we're finding ever in the 3-wood, and we can build from there. And the rest of them.
So just across the board for like tour tipping, the average would be like, you know, 1.5 inches on a driver, an inch on or 2 inches on a 3-wood.
No.
Like, how does that work? Explain that to me real quick.
Generally speaking, I would say on average for tour, it's an inch on the tip section. Generally, it'll be an 1.5 inches on the 3-wood, and we can usually match that up. If anything, we might go 1 3/4 inches if we want to tighten it up a little bit, maybe even 2 inches on a 5-wood, but for the most part, it'll be an inch, 1.5 inches.
Okay, I want to talk about MMT because to me that's like been a pretty hot topic for you guys in the first 3 or 4 months of this year since it came out, and the graphite iron shaft game to me is going to be like the thing here in the next 4 to 5 years. I think steel is awesome, but the way that you guys are making graphite shafts now these days are incredible. And talk to me just about the development of MMT and like what's the profile of that shaft? Like I've hit it, I got it in my, I have it literally right there, but like what the hell with that shaft? Like it's amazing. So what did you guys do to it?
It is, yeah. And in the aftermarket world, it has taken off. We actually couldn't forecast the amount of numbers that we're going through on that one.
I'm gonna grab one while you're talking here so people can see what I'm talking about here.
So we had some success with the OT iron, which was previous to that. And it was kind of a new concept that we had come up with. And seeing the success in that, we realized there's really not a lot of options when you're looking for graphite that at least have the stability or the playability of steel. And so that was kind of our goal in developing this shaft that you see here. And what we were able to do was, again, like I said, we do stuff based off of material difference, and we were able to add a metal mesh into that iron. So on tour, we actually have a taper tip set that's 105, and we have a taper tip set that's 125. And it's kind of the first time we've seen that you can get the playability of steel and performance from steel, but in the feel of graphite. And guys have taken off to it. So with the success of it, we've actually also created a separate utility iron. In the past, the driving irons have become really popular, the 1, 2, 3s. And so we created a uniform utility iron shaft because there's really been a need for that as well. And then based off the success on that, we've also now developed and been able to move the weight around a little bit to develop a wedge shaft, a specific MMT wedge shaft to match playability.
I heard about that. Zane told me about that, and I was like, God, like that sounds awesome. Because these shafts, like once again, Marty Savage put these together for me, and when he spec'd them out, he was like, dude, these spec out like 7.0, like their frequency out, like, super stiff, and I was like, oh wow, okay, this is going to be interesting because I don't, I swing it fast enough, but not that fast, and the funny thing is like these are actually very, very, even as stiff and stable as they are, or stouty as they are, they don't play that way. At all. And I don't know if it's just the construction of the shaft or whatever. So for the folks out there, don't be afraid to try one of the heavier, stiffer ones because they're not as crazy boardy as you would think. They're not boardy at all. They're actually very, very easy to play. Get the ball up in the air. They spin. Like it's not super goofy. Is when you're out on tour, I know Abe Answer had the 105 TX, he still does in play. How come more guys out there aren't switching into this shaft? Because I can think of a bunch of players that this shaft actually would probably help out quite a bit.
The player you mentioned is actually a really cool story, and we've been working with him a long time. He went into the OTs, and then he went and got fit and at an aftermarket facility, and they fit him into the OT, and he called me right away. He's like, "You're gonna think I'm crazy, but this is what works, and I want to put it in play. Will you send me a set?" And he was awesome. He was just like, I got bumped down to at the time it was web.com tour, and he's like, "I'm not going to play any PGA. I'm going to forfeit all my exempt statuses, and I'm going to work my way back up. And then playing OT, he ended up having one of the best years of his life. And we ended up developing MMT. So talked to him, sent him a set, and he only had 4 days between the last PGA Tour event. He actually tested him during Houston. He didn't play Houston, but he was getting ready to head overseas for that whole run, and said, I will never put him in play before the President's Cup. I'm not changing anything, but I'll give you feedback. And in those 4 days, they ended up going in play.
Interesting.
So it was very interesting to us. That's kind of when we realized that we were onto something. So that was fun. I would say it's interesting, though, like you said, it frequency stiff, but it also plays stiff. So we've had a lot of success. I mean, for the club builders out there, we've had a lot of success soft stepping them on tour.
That's what mine are soft stepped, yeah.
Yes. So that's kind of one of the things we found that's been working really well.
If you're going to take a player, like, if we're going to use, we'll use Tiger, for example, right? He's diehard, ride or die, X100 guy. Would an MMT, that type of a shaft, would there ever be a crack in the wall to get that kind of a shaft in his irons at any point in his career? Because to me, like, when I look at this profile, I've played X100s basically my whole life. I know exactly how the shaft feels. These don't feel too different than an X100. The only difference between those two shafts is the X100, to me, it takes a little bit more work to get it up in the air with some spin. Like, you could pick it and hit the big knuckleball out there, but with some spin and some flight to it, it's tougher. But these are actually pretty damn easy, but they play very similar. So I'm curious if that was a player like that you guys would ever approach or even try to get into that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, we would love to, obviously. And sorry, I kind of went on a tangent, but to go back to your question, that's the hard part on tour, is that steel has always been dominant in the irons, and it's always been around, and everybody knows what it does. And there have been times where there have been graphite iron shafts come out, and guys have tested them, and the feedback is that it's inconsistent, they can't control ball flight, and they've kind of all shied away from it. So that's the difficult part on tour, is getting guys to realize, like, hey, wait a minute, I can get the performance of a steel shaft in this graphite, and it will perform like it's supposed to. So, we're hoping that on tour we can get some momentum built off of the UT iron, at least to get it started, and even maybe the wedges. And then from there, it's going to filter down into, okay, well, I want to try the full set. But I would expect that as guys start to test them, you're going to start to see more go and play.
Well, are the guys in the trucks stocking them? Like, do you guys give plenty of sets to the guys in the trucks, or is it okay? So it's not like a one-off order. No. We have plenty of stock now, so
we're full run on the PGA Tour for sure. And moving into all the other tours now, it's all filtered out. So hopefully, like I said, when we get a chance or an opportunity, we want to take advantage of it. Okay, hold on. I'm just downloading a game for my son, who apparently needs a game on his iPad. Give me a second. This is the world we're living in right now. I'm surprised I haven't had any interruptions yet. It's all going. Don't do that, Gussie boy. Hold on 1 second. Sorry, guys. Got to do it. Sorry. This is just real life happening right now. If I don't, then we have a problem. I'm going to put my face up there so they can see me. There you go, Gussie. So anyway, Akshay Bhatia, just the young whippersnapper, left-handed kid. Actually, you should mess around with these kid. These MMTs. I think he's in a KBS shaft right now, which is a good shaft. But for a player like him, these might be interesting for him as well. So what's the plan for? Like, where do graphite iron shafts need to go? Because right now, I feel like in the last 2 or 3 years, leaps and bounds, you guys have been able to, make these viable, especially on tour, and actually have a shaft that guys on tour would actually consider playing, because that's what moves the needle. Like, the moment those guys start putting into play like crazy, they're gonna even sell even more. But what do you think the next 5 years looks? Do you think there's ever a world where we live in where like close to half of the guys on tour are playing graphite? I think it'll happen sooner than later. I don't know if I can say it's going to happen in the next 5 years, but I definitely, everybody's always searching for something better. So, if you look at what happened in the wood world, right, it didn't take long before everything went graphite.
Sure.
And not to say that that's ever going to happen on the PGA Tour, because everybody makes great shafts. But I do see a need for testing something new, and hopefully, we've already got engineers working on new things and new materials, and keep it moving.
Well, it's so like Roar Golf said, if they play the same, then why would they change from steel? Like, basically he's asking what the benefits are, and like I could, from a consumer standpoint, I could tell you one is graphite shaft companies can basically do whatever they want to a graphite iron shaft. Like steel shafts are pretty fixed. Like they just come out and they're pretty stout and they make them. There's not a whole lot you can do to them. Where, on tour, especially if you get a player that's looking for a very specific ball flight, you can Frankenstein a graphite iron shaft to fit that exact ball flight. Like you could tailor it to that specific player, not in a broad sense. Like literally, like this is a one-off shaft for this guy, and it didn't require us to rewire our whole facility to do it. You could typed it in the computer and it spit out these shafts, right? Is that kind of how it works?
Yeah, a little bit more difficult than that. I mean,
Sure.
Obviously, if you have a relationship with the player and you know what they're looking for, that's one of the things that kind of separates us, is we can create anything from start to scratch to the end product. So we can design anything that anybody's looking for. I would say one of the cool things that we did with all of our testing, and again, we tested it against several different iron shafts. And performance-wise, the basics, launch, spin, everything is pretty similar. Okay. The cool thing about MMT was that distance didn't change, but it had a steeper descent angle. So stops faster. So when you're looking at the irons, that's a pretty important factor to weigh in. Especially at the tour level. If their numbers aren't changing with the ball stopping quicker, like that's a huge thing. So if you're going up against if you're taking the MMT and putting them up against Project X and X100 and S400 and all the iron shafts that are out there, where did it really, really shine, and where did it not shine? Like, where were you guys looking like, okay, like, we're still lacking here? Was there a part there? I think we're still trying to dial in stiffness. Like I said, right now we're seeing a lot of success with MMT, but it's soft stepping it a little bit. But I would say that it really shined. The shock to us was the numbers. Looking at TrackMan data and seeing how close we actually were to steel, but getting the feel of graphite. So it's going to have a little softer feel. It's going to be more consistent. For us, that was a key.
Have you guys ever considered doing like a blend sex? I know you guys have 105 TX. You have 125 TX. But what about a middle 115 TX where you could go, 4 iron 105, then 115, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 wedge in the heavy one? Like, is that ever you guys ever thought about doing something like that?
Yeah, and like I said, this is new for us, and that's one of the reasons that it's so exciting, is that we really haven't gone down this road yet. So when we were originally creating them, we looked at iron weights that were in play quite a bit, right, and went to target those weights, and then from there we can start to adjust, and we can change weighting, or we can do, like you said, make a blended set for weights, or, you can change, kind of just make a descending mass. I mean, there's a lot that we can do with it. We haven't ventured down that road yet.
Yeah, like an AMT type shaft, which I think would be pretty interesting, and obviously look pretty good in the bag. Okay, so as far as one of the other questions I got here, and you sort of answered it, but you didn't. I mean, we can ask it straight up. Like, difference between the Diamana D+. Actually, let's do it this way. What's the difference between Tensei White and Tensei White AV? So I know, but tell them.
The materials in the AV line are the same exact. We decided, except, in the tip section. Let me take that back. I'm sorry. There's a big difference. The biggest difference that you're going to see in the AV line is that silver handle. We went with an aluminum vapor material, and we decided that the raw finish looked really, really good. The CK obviously stood for carbon Kevlar. So the carbon Kevlar was a thicker material and a little bit softer material. So the one thing we found on tour is that guys are used to kind of a standard butt section. And sometimes when testing the Tensei, they would say it performed great, but they didn't like the thicker feel. The aluminum is back to standard as far as width in the handle. And it's generally about 6 to 10 cycles stiffer in the handle. So almost a flex, half flex to a flex, stiffer in the handle. But still provides the feedback that we got with carbon Kevlar. So guys are feeling a little bit more control. If you were to compare them side by side, generally speaking, what we're seeing on tour is the AV is slightly lower launching and slightly low or higher launching actually, and lower spinning than the current CK.
Okay, so we're going to do this because I get this question all the time too. So we're going to take Kuro Kage XTS, we're going to take Tensei White, we're going to take DF, and we're going to take D+. Okay? Of those 4 profiles, what's the lowest launching, the lowest spinning shaft?
I would go with the Diamond DF.
Okay. What is the stiffest of those 3 profiles? All at 70 TX, all the same.
All at 70 TX, same thing, Diamond DF. And then I would say the D+ follows kind of right behind. Okay. And then you'll move into the Tensei line from there.
And you're talking about, once you get to the Tensei line, how many RPMs, like just on average, if you're on an iron Byron, like, are you talking a couple hundred RPMs and spin? Like, how does that translate into numbers?
300-400 RPMs and spin. And I would say that the Kuro Kage falls, if you're talking about the profile on tour that everybody, the XT profile, it's going to fall similar to what we see in Tensei White. Okay. It's just it has a different feel than Tensei White does. And so everybody feels different, you know. And that's the hard part. You got to match player with, you know, feel as well. So sure, which is nice to have, you know, all those different profiles. But what I've noticed also is, like, there's guys on tour, like if I was going to take Webb Simpson, Charlie Howe, guys that are like CK, you know, Pro AV 65 Blue, Ride or Die. Because I've talked to Charlie about it before, and he's like, I love this. Like, it's going to be really hard to get me out of this shaft, just because I know it's going to. It sweet spots itself, basically, kind of what he said. He's like, I can make a terrible swing, and the ball still comes out of the middle of the face. And but that's, you know, that's a testament to how good that line was. But the Blue AV sort of, to me, is sort of like a cult classic. There's a lot of guys that are in that specific, the 65 AV, that won't switch into the new one. So like because there's a new Blue AV and there's the old Blue AV, right? Well, they're the same. So they're the same. So we've had AV on tour since almost 2 years. Yeah, but when we originally came out with it, it was still in the prototype cosmetic. So that's what you're saying. So if you take a Webb Simpson or Charles Howell, Howell was actually the first to put it in play. He won with it that year too. So yeah, 2018 and 18. Yeah. But what we ended up doing was, it was very difficult on TV to tell the difference of who's playing AV and who's playing CK. So, we kind of, it was one of these things, we realized that the raw finish looked really awesome. So when we finalized the cosmetic and the structure, we went with the raw look. Well, I noticed Freddie Couples stuck AV Blue and the new AV Blue in his driver and his M3, which, you know, I watch his equipment like crazy. So whenever he even makes a grip twinge, I'm always like, oh, he just changed shafts. I'm trying to think what else we could talk. We've covered so much, Avery, in this 39, 40 minutes. Let me see if there's any other questions here. If you guys have any questions for Avery, go ahead and chime in. Actually, I have one, kind of an interesting one. So, so Rocco Media and I have become not super best friends, but we're, kind of chummy and talk a lot. And, he swings the driver at 105, 106, and he is in a set of 7.0 precision rifles at 130 grams. He's been in the same shaft since, the 80s. And I was talking to him a little bit about that, and I was like, what is it about heavy? You think that profile would be like unswingable, but his whole thing was like, heavy and stiff is actually good. There's nothing wrong with heavy and stiff. What are your opinions on that? Like, if you have a guy that just loves heavy and really stouty, like, what is your opinion? Is it completely wrong, or is it? No. It's kind of what we were talking about, right? I mean, the hard part is it's very subjective to the player. So certain players are going to feel certain things. So if you took a guy like that and you try to say, well, this is the better product for you, this is really what you fit into. Like I said, on paper, things sometimes match up, but when you actually put it in front of the player, it's not going to match up. And that's the hard part. You can build something exact and say, this is the exact profile that is meant for you. And when they hit it, if it doesn't time up with what they're used to or what they like, they'll never hit it good.
That's interesting because he was in a set of 105 something that they put him in a set of Strixons, and he's like, I hit them solid, but I didn't know where they were going to go. I was hitting all these flares out to the right, and then all of a sudden I get in the stiffer, my old profile, and the ball starts turning over. And because Ian Fraser from TXG, we talked a little bit about that because I play really heavy, really stiff shafts, and I don't swing it that hard. I mean, I'm 105, 110. With a bad back, and but that is for me. That's my timing mechanism. I just when it's too light and too soft, I literally can't hit the ball. Yeah. So it's interesting that you say that. Okay, good to know.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of specs you'll see on tour where you're like, that doesn't match up at all. But it's what they know, and it's how.
JB Holmes in an S400. It's like, what the hell?
Yeah. Wait, that doesn't make sense.
What's wrong with you? Yeah.
Yeah, but he knows how it feels. He knows how it loads. And so if you give him something else, then impact's going to completely change.
Right. Let me see here. Oh, last question I want to ask you because I talked to Zane a little bit about this. So you guys have a completely dark horse putter shaft, the Diamana putter shaft, which nobody ever talks about. Like, I know it's on the website, but it's just like it's a secret. Like, talk to me a little bit about that putter shaft because it's supposed to be. A couple of people I know have had it in their putter, and Zane was just like, "Dude, this thing is amazing. Like, this putter shaft is so good." So, talk to me a little bit about the Diamana putter shaft.
Well, we don't do a lot with it out on tour for the same thing. I mean, trying to convince a guy to go into a graphite putter shaft is pretty difficult. We do have some in the demo bags. Guys have hit them and they've loved them. Right. To me, it's always been, you see nowadays the companies all put inserts into putters. So there's certain players that'll never get out of a milled face. You can't put an insert in it. They just hate the way it feels. So you can kind of get the soft feel of an insert with a milled face. And I would say that's, for me, the biggest impact. But you're right. It's been pretty amazing because we don't talk about it. We don't do much with it. But anybody that tries it, it's all of a sudden, can I get one of those? Like, send it to my house tomorrow sort of deal.
It's going that way. Like the graphite putter thing, like with all the stability shafts and, going graphite into putters, the next obvious choice because you can make them so whippy and you can make them so stout.
There's a lot of playability.
Yeah. I mean, and it's, I know Ricky Fowler put one, not one of yours, but another manufacturer, he put one in and he's supposed to be stiff as all hell. And Bryson's got a really stiff one. So I'm when he told me about that, I'm like, I'm intrigued. Like, I want to see.
Yeah.
Like, has he sent you one yet?
Yeah, barely.
No, he was not with the Rona, not yet. I'm sure it'll show up at some point. But I want to try it. Like, it's something I definitely want to try because the whole stability shaft thing to me I'm always curious about it. But at the same time, they're making the head so stable, so I don't really care about the shaft. I mean, the Spider X head. I mean, Jesus, man, it's so you can't twist it. It doesn't move. Like, it's just, it stays in a straight line. So what do I need a stiff shaft for?
I would say it's more feel, though. I mean, it's pretty amazing if you putt with a graphite shaft, the feel that it gives you. We will. And especially in putting.
Do you have one?
Yeah.
You do? Okay, so what shafts, let's talk, you're a Mitsubishi guy. What shafts do you have in your clubs?
So, driver, Avery White. I actually have the BF in 3-wood, and then
same as me.
shocker. I have MMT in my irons and wedges and driving iron, and then the Diamana putter shaft. So,
wow, you're a company guy, company man.
Haven't played steel in a very long time.
I don't blame you. I know just for the folks there, I know Brooks Koepka put MMT 105 TX, I think, in his 2-iron. It's in his UDI is 3-iron. Yeah.
Yep.
So
it's out there. Tensei White.
Yes, you can play Hello Ninja. So, all right, Avery, I always love talking to you, brother.
Yeah, this is fun.
Yeah. So, if you guys have any more questions for Avery, he is at Reed_Ave. It's his private account, but I'm sure if you have anything that's pressing that you need to ask. Then also you have at Mitsubishi Chemical Golf. Any Aldila MCA questions you have, John and the boys over there are really, really good at answering questions. And obviously you can hit me up at Johnny_Wunder. To talk, whatever. I have a lot of experience with these Mitsubishi boys, so I know the shafts fairly well. And Avery, remember to wash your hands.
Yeah,
take care of your family.
You too.
And hopefully, I'll see you out on the road sometime soon, sooner than later.
Ready to get back out there. And thanks again for your time. This was fun. I enjoy it. So,
dude, I always love talking to you, buddy. Always.
Yeah.
So it's always a good time.
All right. Well, we'll stay in touch and definitely see you soon. So.
All right, man. Take care.
All right. We'll leave.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye. So that was Mr. Avery Reed. You gotta give a shout out to all these, all the tour techs. Like, and I get to talk to a lot of them. There's some really good people, really good guys that are running those trucks and reps, and from the Fuji guys like Fuji Pad and Avery with Mitsubishi and Trotty and Adrian and those guys and Wade and all those boys in the Titleist truck, and Aaron and JJ in the Titleist truck, and Simon and Jacob on the Callaway truck. And there's some really, really cool people. And the thing that I've loved so much about getting to know these guys is, one, they're all golf junkies, which is awesome. But they're all really good educators. Like Kent Notes from Ping, you ask him a question and he's always education first. So is Trotty's like that too. You ask him a question, like he's turns into a teacher immediately. And I like that the conversations don't go way over our head with a ton of tech talk, because it can get a little heady. But all these guys are phenomenal at making sure that everybody else, all of us, understand why they're making clubs the way that they do. And it's we're not all tour players, but at the same time, we're all golfers and we have curiosities and we want things to work. And these guys are, as good as they get, and you eat something. You guys stay safe. We got Wedge Wednesdays tomorrow with Aaron Dill. Thursday, we're going on live with Akshay Bhatia. We're going to be trying to get tour players on Thursday. So that's going to be kind of the tour player day is Thursday. So first guest is an easy one. Akshay, he's always a good conversation. So we're going to pop in with him. And then Friday, Trotty and I are going back at it to do the hashtag WRXing from home. Boy, my brain's not working. I think I might be losing my mind. Anyway, guys, God bless. Thank you for all the questions. I hope I got to enough of them. Just couldn't get to all of them, but, we're in lockdown. Plenty of time to talk. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and DM me. Talk to you later. Thanks.